It's Marie Forleo, and you're watching Marie TV, a very special edition because we decided to do this interview right here with my dear friend Chris Guillebeau because guess what? He's got an awesome new book out right now, and it's called The Happiness of Pursuit. And I am so excited. I adore Chris. I adore his work. Many of you know him already. We did an interview for his last book, The $100 Startup, and he's just one of the sweetest, kindest, smartest, most brilliant people, and I wanted to have him on today because I thought these concepts were awesome. So Chris, thanks for coming back on Marie TV.
Marie, hello and thank you. It's a huge honor. I'm so happy to be back. Thank you.
Awesome. So tell us about the happiness of pursuit, finding the quest that will bring purpose to your life. So what inspired you to write this new book?
Okay, so since we last talked, I had been wrapping up a personal project. It was a quest to visit every country in the world. We might have even talked about it a little bit last time. I'd been working on it for about 8 years or so then. So it was a 10-year quest in total. I just kind of came to the end of it last year. And it was something that was initially just a personal project. It was something that I believed in for myself, and I loved travel, and I loved the value of exploration and discovery. And so as I pursued this quest, I knew I wanted to write something about it. But fortunately, I didn't just write a book about myself. I didn't just write a travel memoir because that would be kind of boring. So all along the way, I was meeting lots of interesting, remarkable people who were all pursuing a quest or some kind of adventure of their own. And I wanted to know, why did they do it? And what lessons did they learn along the way? And how were they changed through the process? What did they sacrifice or give up in order to pursue it? And why bother? You know, what can the rest of us learn about quests? And then lastly, it's not really meant to be a sociological study. It's not just like a collection of like this person did this and this person did this, blah, blah. The book actually has a clear message, and the message is that a quest can improve your life. A quest can actually bring purpose and meaning to your life too.
I love it. So let me ask you this. Were you, as a young person or as a young boy, were you always into adventure, and did you have quests when you were little?
I don't know if I had quests per se. I was always a list maker. This is something that I noticed is actually really common in all the people I talk to. I really like to write things down, and I like to write down my tasks and write down my ideas and outlines, even in rough, form. I really like to kind of, break things down into small little, projects or things. So I think it was maybe a value that I had, and then I kind of grew into it more. And then I started traveling, and it wasn't like I went to my first country and I was like, oh, I'm going to go to the rest of every single 193 countries in the world. I kind of gained confidence as I had some experience. That was something else that I saw with a lot of different people is they started with a small vision and they kind of came to a bigger one later on.
Interesting. So if I heard you right, and please correct me if I'm wrong, when you started traveling to different countries, it wasn't necessarily like, well, obviously because you might have done some travel, you did some travel
Right.
earlier on in your life, but then as you got that appetite wet for travel, you saw an expanded vision and said, hey, why don't I set this adventure goal for myself to see every country in the world? So it wasn't even like you started off like, this is my quest. It's
Correct.
something that
Absolutely.
evolved.
Yes, absolutely. I had no idea that this would become something that would consume my life, for more than 10 years. I just started traveling. I loved traveling. I lived in West Africa for a while, and through that I kind of gained some confidence and just really experienced the joy of being in different places. And then I think it was after I had been to like 50 countries or so, I was like, but still though, it's not that difficult. After I'd been to like 50-ish, I thought, let me set a personal goal, because I always liked goals, of trying to go to 100 countries, right? So that was the first one. And then I started getting close to that, and I thought, how can I take it up a level? Because if I'm just going to half the countries in the world, I could kind of cheat a little bit because, I could just pick the easy country. So yeah, it was something that I grew into totally. And for me, what made a difference was combining travel with goal setting, combining travel with something specific, with structure, with a little bit of a container to it. And that just kind of changed the whole purpose and focus for me.
And you saw that with the people in the book as well, that they perhaps started something, their appetite got whet, and then all of a sudden a new, bigger world opened up to them that became this quest, this adventure they wanted to go on?
Yeah, yes, very often. And the specificity helped a lot. There's one story, Robin Devine in Omaha, Nebraska. She's a knitter, and she's like super excited about knitting, and she's an artist, and she makes stuff, and she had this project to make hats for people. And that's how it was at first. She was like, I'm just going to make hats. So she made hats for her friends and her family, just like a lot of knitters do. But then she had the idea of creating some specific structure to it. And at first she thought, I want to knit 1,000 hats. Like, what would that look like, et cetera. So she started working toward that and figuring out how much time and how much money and are there any other costs, all that. And then she decided to increase the goal and go to 10,000 hats. So now it's like her life quest, which I forget how many years it's going to take. You can actually go to her website and request a hat. There may be a waiting period. But eventually she's going to make 10,000 hats. So yeah, a lot of people, they found that their vision expanded, but then also as they worked towards something, they made it more specific.
So let's talk now about the link between quests or adventures that we can go on, if we want to call it that, and happiness. What did you discover, not only for yourself, but what did you discover from the stories of everyone that you interviewed for the book?
So for myself, when I started traveling and then pursuing the goal, I think it kind of came out of a sense of discontent or dissatisfaction, which doesn't mean that I was miserable. It's not like I was terribly unhappy. Like I had a good life. I had become an entrepreneur. I was working for myself. But yet I guess I felt like I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted more. And a lot of the people that we talked to who are in the book, they have the same kind of discontent. It was a yearning for something. It was a yearning to connect something broader in their life. They often were happy. They had good families. They had good jobs or good businesses or something. But yet, they had this desire to go further. And so that's where I saw really a link between the happiness and the pursuit of a goal. The pursuit of a goal, bigger than ourselves. I mean, something that is really significant, something that is really challenging. Because there's also a link between a quest and a challenge, I think. I think, if your quest is like to go down the street and get coffee and come back, it's not really a quest, right? But when you combine it with something that's challenging, maybe hard, but also rewarding, that's where I think a lot of us can find happiness.
Have you seen that people are working on multiple quests at once, or do most people kind of choose something that feels challenging, meaty, maybe a little bit scary, totally exciting?
Sure. I mean, I think there's more than one way, to do it. And I'm always the kind of person that I like to work on a bunch of stuff at once. It's just my personality, for better or worse, right?
Yeah.
But I also think, a true quest, a true adventure, it does involve some kind of sacrifice. It does involve some kind of trade-off. I mean, if sacrifice is too heavy a word, let's say trade-off, to go to every country in the world, like, it was a pretty big thing. Like, there were a lot of things I had to say no to in order to say yes to that.
Like what? Like what?
Like what? Like building my career. I was on the road in Central Africa and Central Asia and Bangladesh and all these places 100 days a year often. Yeah. And I couldn't really work on my business very much, during that time. And that was okay. I had to say no to lots of opportunities, that are coming through. But I guess I really believed in this project. I really believed in doing it. And every time I would start to think, oh, maybe I, shouldn't get on that plane and go to Chad or whatever. Like, no, I have to do, like, this is the root of everything. This is the foundation that everything else is built on. So yes, I think you can do a lot of stuff. But I guess also if you really believe in something, like, it's going to take something from you as well.
Yeah. No, I love this discussion because, especially, Chris, I love that you shared the self-doubt that can creep up. I think for anyone who's creative, if you call it a quest, or if it's a project, to write a book, or if it's something to build a business or create something that's never been created before, and part of that adventure is you bringing it into the world. I think that self-doubt is so, it's a topic that many of us, we don't like to talk about. I love hearing that you were like, okay, should I get on this plane to Chad? And I have all these different opportunities coming in. I mean, I'm working on another writing project right now, and I feel like daily the self-doubt voices are like, God, do you even know enough to write this? Does anyone care? It's amazing. Did you notice that the other folks that you interviewed as well had those wrestlings with self-doubt in pursuit of their adventure or their quest?
Absolutely. Like almost all of them.
Yeah.
Almost all of them in different ways. And they spoke about it in different ways. People use different language. But everyone experiences that, I think. I think the bigger the challenge, maybe the more the self-doubt or the more the fear, but also maybe more the stirring that you have to do it. It's this idea that's not going to leave you alone. And I think a lot of them maybe were focused on the long term and they're focused on the outcome. And they thought about that book that they wanted to write or whatever it was. And they imagined having that out and they thought about the people who would be helped by it. And that's kind of what got them through, that's the focus on the other side. I mean, I think a lot of them also, the other interesting thing I noticed they had in common was a lot of them had what I called an emotional awareness of mortality. And this also sounds kind of heavy, but it doesn't need to.
I love it. We talk
yeah.
about death on Marie TV all the time because I just think it's one of the most sobering and it wakes you up. It wakes you up to value each moment. So not to interrupt, but let's talk about that. Let's talk about that reality of mortality.
Right. So the emotional awareness of it as opposed to the intellectual awareness. So I think everyone has an intellectual awareness of mortality, which I define in the book as just the fact that everybody dies, right? It's just a fact, right? But the emotional awareness of mortality is what I noticed a lot of these people talked about as I interviewed them, and they brought it up. Like I didn't even ask, like, hey, what do you think about death? Like it's just, it's not really the best interview question. But a lot of them talked about different experiences they'd had, either with like an accident that they'd had or a close call that they'd had or someone that they loved and lost, something that just brought them closer to the awareness that not only everyone else in the world is going to die one day, but I too, will die. And just the focus on the fact that life is short, we should live with urgency, that also kind of helps to overcome some of the self-doubt, I think. I think you think, okay, what really matters? Yeah, I've got my own stuff, I've got my own anxiety or whatever that thing is that most of us struggle with, but I also have this dream and I also want more. I want to improve my life. I'm taking time to watch Marie TV because not just I want to be entertained, but I want to improve my life. I want to take steps toward that. So that's something else that people had in common that I think is actually helpful.
Yeah, and that's one of the values of this. It's one of the values of your book and why I'm so happy that you wrote it and that we're sharing it today is so many of us can find ourselves different parts of the journey struggling with, is there more? Is there more meaning? I think one of the most touching stories for me was about the young man who lost his wife. Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yes, this is a beautiful story. It is a sad story, as you alluded to, but it's also a beautiful story. This is a story of a young couple who met in South Korea, and he was American, she was Canadian, and they were both teaching English there. They met when they were really young, say young 20s or so, and they fell in love, and they were beginning to plan a life together. But unfortunately, she received a diagnosis of breast cancer. So they returned to North America and she got treatment, but unfortunately the treatment was not successful. And so she did end up going into hospice. And before she died, she had been writing a blog. She had her own bucket list of all these things that she wanted to do in her life, and she began, working toward them. And after she died, which of course is very sad, Adam, the young man, decided to take on her quest for himself. And he decided to take over writing her blog and pursuing all of those items, on the list. So she wanted to learn how to knit. And so now, he learned how to knit. She wanted to run a marathon, so he began training for that. She wanted to volunteer in India, so he made a commitment to go and do that. And it is a beautiful story of how he adopted the legacy that she was preparing. So it's sad, but he also talked about how he found purpose in that. He found purpose in that through his own grief.
Yeah.
But then, also through his own foundation for the future. And he said that he had always been inspired by Megan. And had been inspired by this list that she had, so he hoped to follow it up.
It was so touching, and it brings tears to my eyes right now because this life is so short and it's so fleeting and it's just incredible. Anyway, really, really great story. So the other thing, I know travel, obviously huge passion of yours. It's a passion of mine, many folks in our audience. But if someone, let's say they don't have the means to travel, or perhaps some kind of huge, big adventure is just not in their cards right now. Let's talk about some of the smaller quests and the smaller adventures that people took were equally as fulfilling and exciting and also really creative.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't even necessarily think that they were smaller, in
Yeah.
some way. I feel like they're just different. And each of us has our own abilities, our own desires and capacities, blah, blah. So one of the stories I really, really liked is from Sasha Martin, who's in Oklahoma City. And Sasha had grown up overseas. I think her dad was working for some European company or something. So she had this international perspective, but then she met a guy and kind of settled down, and she had a daughter and wasn't able to travel much. But she also had a culinary arts degree, and she wanted to raise her family with an international perspective. She thought Oklahoma is cool, but like I want, to have a broader worldview than just that. So because she wasn't able to visit every country in the world, she decided to make a meal from every country in the world. And this wasn't just like a half-ass kind of thing. This was like a once a week. She would devote like lots of time to researching all these different recipes, and she would play the music from the country, and she would like get the flag, and she turned it into a community thing, and people are starting to visit, right? And so her daughter, like her daughter's first solid food is Afghan chicken, and her daughter's like 3 years old now and is equally proficient with chopsticks or silverware or her fingers, depending on the food. And she's just talked about how it's made such a huge difference in her family, and also connecting it to people all over the world because she's been posting her recipes online and sharing this whole journey with other people. So it's something that started also as a personal project, just like mine, but it became, much more impactful over time.
That was one of my other favorite stories from the book because I really saw how fun that could be and how this idea of having a quest that we can do it right from our own house, just using our
Absolutely.
imagination and our hearts and our desire to connect with something bigger than ourselves and
Hmm.
to stretch ourselves, which I think
Right.
is really it's something that I love doing in my own life, but I've never quite seen it put in the framework and the context of what you wrote, which is again why I'm so excited to have you on. So let's talk about something else that I thought was really interesting. We have a lot of multi-passionate entrepreneurs and a lot of creative folks in our audience who, again, we talked about, do lots of different things. And one of the things that struck me about this idea of a quest or an adventure and having a set container, a beginning, middle, and an end, was the power of finishing something.
Mm.
So many of us, I know certainly myself, you can get these great ideas and you kind of
Yep.
like, okay,
Me
I'm going to
too.
do yoga all the time, or I'm going to meditate every day, or I'm going to completely change my diet. And people
Hmm.
take on so much, or they start a new project, they start a new business, they start a new product or program they want to put out into the world, and it's kind of half finished. How strong is the connection between having, a quest and the power of finishing? What can that teach us?
Mm. Well, one of the things I had to decide in the very beginning was what is a quest, right? Because for the previous book, I'm writing about small businesses who got started without spending a lot of money. That's really straightforward, and I found a lot of people who fit that category. When I thought about quests, I kind of had to go back, like, okay, let's go way back, right? Like, what is a quest in like ancient days? There's someone who's going out to like find the Holy Grail or defend his village or something, or find this magic ring or something. And there's always a destination in mind. There's always an end goal, right? And it might take a long time. There might be like many different, trails and sidetracks and things that happen along the way, lots of challenge and transformation, et cetera, et cetera. But there is a goal, right? There is a destination, something that you're working toward. And so that's the framework that I used for my quest. And that's what most of the people that I talk to as well. It is very much about the process and the journey, but we are working towards something. We are hoping to reach that destination at a certain point. And I too work on lots of different stuff and often get sidetracked. But I think one reason the quest was successful and why it kept me focused is I knew where I was going. And I had 193 countries and I could check them off as I went along. I put them in my Evernote and I put a little X next to them and I watched it grow. And I got tired at different points, but I could see the progress I had made. And it became like a cost benefit analysis after a certain point. I'm like, well, I've got 100 countries already. Am I going to stop? I've got 150 countries. There's only like, 40 more to go or whatever. And so it helped a lot. Again, like with the other examples, making a meal for every country, she could have just said, oh, I'm going to make a bunch of foreign food, right? But not really that specific. And Robin's quest as well to make 10,000 hats. She always liked knitting and she could just keep doing that and it's fine, and that's fine. But she talked about how having the number gave her purpose. The other thing is I like deadlines. I think deadlines are our friends. if somebody ever gives me something without a deadline, I always tell them that's dangerous because it's just going to get pushed probably, right?
Yeah,
Just
I
my
mean,
nature.
it's Parkinson's law too, if I'm accurate on that one. I mean, work expands to fill the time allotted,
Yep.
and it will just expand forever and ever and ever unless we put some
Yeah.
kind of container around it.
Right. So deadlines are great. That's why I like doing live events because there's a deadline. I can't, if I've got like thousands of people coming in town for something, I can't just be like, oh, I need 2 more days, come back, or with a book launch or something. But for me, I chose my 35th birthday as the deadline, for the quest. And I chose that 7 years prior to finishing, right? And so as I got closer and there were different opportunities and I felt pressured in different ways, it kind of helped me to keep that in mind. I was like, no, I know I need to do like at least 20 countries a year, to achieve this goal. And if it gets hard, I just have to figure it out, right? So deadlines are our friends. Structure is our friends, right? Structure, deadlines, parameters. There's another quote that I liked in the book. This is from Elise Blaha-Kripe. She talked about how everybody's always saying like entrepreneurs and creatives should get out of the box, right? But for me, I want to get in the box. I want to define my own box. I don't want someone to be like, here's your box, right? I want to make my own box, but once I've made it, I want to actually have clear parameters and rules, and that's the scope of what I operate in. And I'm actually going to be more productive. I'm probably going to help the world a lot better if I'm in my box than if I'm just anywhere.
Everybody, get in your box. You heard it from Chris Guillebeau, and of course, my mind is going places you don't want to go, but just get in your box, people, because it's good in there.
Sorry, that was a long thing.
No, are you kidding me? I liked it, and I can probably see the tweetable of this episode. Marie and Chris are telling you to get in your box, which is brilliant. Hashtag get in your box. So I have to comment on something else, though, because I think you and I are a little similar, and probably lots of folks that are listening right now. The absolute joy that comes from crossing something off your list, immense. In our team, we have these priorities docs that have very clear structure and guidelines for the things that we're working on, and so we can all see what we're doing. And the team, including myself, we get so friggin' excited when we cross things off. And I was thinking about this in the framework of Quest and how much fun that is when you've defined that container and you have something you're excited about working on and just putting those lines through. It's like really acknowledging the journey and the joy and looking forward to the destination, which is great. Really, really great. Let me see here. So that's a lot of what I wanted to talk about with you. I just think this is such an exciting concept, and I'm really, really thrilled. If you are interested in the idea of having your own quest, please go out and get Chris's book. It is fantastic. You'll not only learn about his, but you'll learn about so many other people's as well, and hopefully it will inspire you to discover your own quest. So Chris, is there anything else that we haven't talked about? Any main points or things that you find in writing this book that you're like, God, I really wish people would either get this or know this or consider this for their own lives?
What I hope that they'll consider is, I hope that they'll think about what the value of adventure means to them. I hope that they will think like, hey, maybe I can't go to every country in the world, right? But there's something that I can do. And I also feel that stirring of wanting something different. Maybe I'm discontented in a way, which again is not a terrible word. It doesn't mean you're miserable. It does mean that you long for something more and you want to improve your life. And you do find joy in doing things that are fun and meaningful and connect with other people. I hope that you'll think about that. I think maybe we have a challenge for them in some fashion.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. With Marie TV, we always love to challenge you in the comments below. So this is what Chris and I thought of for today. What does adventure mean to you, that word? If it does mean anything like travel, if it means like pursuing a spiritual goal, or perhaps it's athletic, or perhaps it's artistic, what does adventure mean to you? And then the second part that we'd love to hear is, how can you create a container, a quest, something specific that kind of hones in that beautiful adventure, that calling that you feel within your heart, and make it something that not only is achievable for you, that has a specific deadline, but of course that you could share and connect with other people. So we would love to hear all about it in the comments below, so make sure that you tell us. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us about your quest and this brilliant new book that you're sharing with the world. We absolutely adore you and just want to thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much. I adore you. I adore Marie TV viewers. I want to say one more thing, if I could jump in,
of course.
If that's all right. Last time I did the book and we did the show, and I went on tour, and at every stop along the way, I think I heard from Marie TV viewers. Yay! And so this time I'm doing 40 cities, again, people can sign up for free tickets on my website, or they can just show up. They don't even have to sign up. And I would love to see you. So please come out and say hi. I'll take a picture of you. I'll text it to Marie, and then she'll probably block me because she'd be like, "You're sending me all these
No,
messages."
absolutely not.
But it was just it was a big joy, and it made a huge difference for me last time. So I want to thank you publicly, but also all your viewers and great community.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. And by the way, we will put links not only for Chris's book, but we'll put links back to his website so that if you want to go see him on tour and you want to meet this incredible man in person, that you'll know exactly where you can do it. Chris is amazing. So as always, thank you so much for watching Marie TV. If you like this episode, like it and subscribe and share it with all your friends. And if you want even more awesome resources to create a business and life that you love, plus some updates from me that I only get to talk about in email, come on over to marieforleo.com and sign up for email updates. Stay on your game and keep going for your dreams, because the world needs that special gift that only you have. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Marie TV. Bye, everybody.
Yeah, another thing I think of just really quick is like the choices that we make now affect the options available to us in the future, right? And I often kind of like give myself that self-talk a lot, you know, when I don't feel like doing. Again? What's that? The choices that we make now affect the opportunities available to us in the future.